OWS Week has been to New York City's aiming the megaphones at political and financial elites, a solidarity action with worldwide protesters to make global noise for global justice. This while Occupy Detroit gathered to celebrate their first anniversary and plan their second year of community actions. Over in sunny California, Anaheim occupiers staged a counter-protest to represent those shot down by Anaheim PD. Pasadena protesters met at Obama and Democratic headquarters to remind the president and his supporters of political prisoner Private Bradley Manning, and merry bands of occupiers in Southern California and Portland mounted foreclosure protection actions for homes where children once played, now tagged forts and barricaded against eviction. OWS Week has also had enough time to eavesdrop on the voices of radical outreach and to sneak up on the puppet builders of boulders. We don't owe, we won't pay. As the presidential election grinds on, Free Bradley Manning SoCal staged an action on October 8th in an attempt to remind citizens of the young political prisoner. Several activists gathered outside the new Obama headquarters in Pasadena and marched to the United Democratic headquarters to show solidarity with Private Manning. Occupiers in Portland, Oregon, East Los Angeles, and Van Nuys, California, continued their foreclosure and eviction protection actions at the homes of the Williams, Hernandez, and Lucero families. All three families fell victim to mortgage broker and bank callousness in the face of medical and financial difficulties. Homes where children once played have been fortified and barricaded in last-ditch attempts to fend off sheriff's evictions.
I come out to support my homeless. I feed them every week. When I've come out in the past few months, the police, they've said that, and I've seen them, the police have been out here kicking them out of the park for this event, and this is their home.
The homeowners have reached out to media and the public, airing private matters and desperate pleas for assistance. Occupy and a radical coalition of familia, activists, and community members have heeded their calls. Yet the remainder of the country remains eerily silent, as if these families' circumstances are unique. Occupy Detroit celebrated their first anniversary on Sunday, October 14th.
Hello everyone, my name is Susan Ryan. I'm from Ask Me Local 207. I've been working for the water department for 15 years and I've been living in Detroit for about 22. I'm very proud to stand here today. I'm very proud to stand here today with the people from Occupy Detroit because you were some of the first people that stepped forward and passed a resolution to support our strike. You were some of the first people to understand that privatization and takeover is the new Jim Crow. That what they're trying to do to us here in Detroit is what they're trying to do all over this country, is divide us and make us feel powerless. And when we build a movement and we try to gain things, they seem to always find another candidate for us to support, another proposition to spend time on petitions with. And really what we need to learn as a movement is how to make our own demands and how to win those demands. How to figure out how to build a movement that brings people together in such a way that has a movement strategy. Not an electoral strategy, not a congressional strategy, but a movement strategy where we can figure out how to keep schools like Catherine Ferguson open, where we can figure out how to win strikes like the one we won in the department, in the water department, so that we can win against big federal judges. When they pass their injunctions, we can say no to them and we can succeed. And I just wanted to say to you today that we're very proud of what we achieved in Ask Me 207, but we could not have won. We could not have won without the support of Detroit. And everywhere I went during the time of the strike and before, people told me again and again, we support you. But they also wanted me to understand. They wanted me to understand how angry they were, how hard it is to live in Detroit, how dissatisfied and powerless they feel in the face of privatization, takeover, and all of the things that go with it.
Occupiers met for reflection and discussion about the evolving movement and how version 2 of Occupy Detroit will launch.
The real reason that the houses are in such bad condition is because we're so concerned about what affects us. How can I get my little piece out of this house and destroy the rest of the neighborhood? And what's going to save us is our ability to come together and see what's of value to all of us.
Hi, my name's Luciana Sabgash. I'm a Saginaw native, and I had only lived in Detroit practically no time at all before Occupy jumped off. I had a feeling all summer last summer that something was going to happen. I remember seeing the hashtag Occupy Wall Street, and I had not been following Adbusters, and I was like, this might be it. I don't know what the revolution was going to look like, but I wanted in. I didn't know what my job was going to be, but I was sure I was going to do something. I didn't know what the most important issue to me was until I had a lot more personal clarity, but I knew I wanted to win. I didn't know terms like direct action or civil disobedience, but I grew up in a household with a fair amount of violence and a man in uniform, so I knew the power balance there. I wasn't afraid. I'm a master camper. I've lived in Alaska, but I have to say Detroit is pretty fierce camping. Not for the faint of heart. Many people in Alaska were raising a fist to that concept. They understood what I was saying. Black bears don't try to mug you.
The 99ers in Detroit have been fully involved in their community, attempting to bring about a better future in a city fallen on very hard times. They have worked tirelessly with local organizations on social and economic justice, stopping evictions, housing homeless families and veterans, working on environmental and sustainability actions, and fighting to keep schools and libraries open.
I remember when you guys first were talking about coming to Detroit, and I'll never lie about anything. I was one of the biggest skeptics about having Occupy Detroit come to Detroit. But one thing that I am so grateful that Occupy Detroit came to Detroit, because one, you got to learn to stop going by what people tell you and start seeing things for yourself and see what people are about. From this union of Occupy Detroit, I have gotten friends who I haven't seen in a while, like Lee, you know, back in touch with them, and I've made so many more new friends, so many more new allies that are helping me when I'm out here in the streets and we're doing what we're all supposed to be doing, which is looking out for each other and having each other's back. It takes a village, y'all. Is proud to be a part of Occupy Detroit, and I'm proud to have Occupy Detroit be a part of It Takes a Village, y'all, because we have to remember that we can start holding a lot of these political leaders accountable. We don't have to just do what they tell us to do. We have to remind them that they are public servants, and we are the public, and when you're not here to tell us what to do, you are here to represent us and do what we ask of you. So with that being said, with a lot of elections and things that are coming up, it's our job to make sure that the people who are running for and the people who are trying to get these positions or may already have the positions are held accountable.
Anonymous occupiers staged a counter-protest in Anaheim, California in response to a day of healing aimed to repair strained relations between Anaheim PD and the community. Protesters joined family members of victims of police violence to point out that it may be a bit early to forgive and forget routine assaults and murders perpetrated by police primarily on young men of color. No justice, no peace. Occupy locations across the country joined over 400 cities in the world for Global Noise on Saturday, October 13th.
Whoa, why am I here?
Yeah.
Truthfully, I just found out about it. I was down at Union Square, and you know, I want the Occupy movement to, you know, to continue. So anytime I find out they're doing something, I want to be there.
Good.
So I'm glad I found out about it.
How long have you been involved?
Pretty much since the beginning. I come from Brooklyn, so I wasn't staying overnight, but I was going down there with signs just about every day since pretty much the start. Hi, I figured you'd be here. Good to see you.
Good, good, good. How do you think the movement is going?
I'm happy to see this many people here today, and you know what? You can't kill an idea. So they can throw us out of parks and everything. All the problems are still there. Everything that was happening to us last year is still here. Foreclosures, people can't afford college, people don't have health care. We didn't snap our fingers and get thrown out of a park and all our problems were gone. They're worse. It's a year later and everything's our rents are still going up, utilities are going up, transit's going up again. So we're in worse shape than last year. So how could the movement be over?
Occupy Wall Street in New York City joined in the cacophony in the streets, staging a casseroles march to show solidarity with the growing calls, especially from Europe, for an end to austerity measures and public service cuts at a time when the rich are getting richer.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Why y'all here today?
We're here to strike debt, man. We're tired of living in this economy where all we do is pay.
Why do you think how did the country get to this point?
The 1%, the people with all of the wealth, I think land is at the center of it. That's what we talk about and take back the land. So as soon as we get the land and control of community, some of that debt starts to disappear. We don't have the same values that they try to instill upon us. The values of the American dream and home ownership and all that. That's just got people like stifled and in trouble right now, right? Why do we have to aspire to home ownership? Why can't we live in communal situations? Why can't community be in control of land and build truly mutual housing, co-op housing on top of that land, and we all share resources, right?
I agree.
There you go.
But now you're here specifically about the school debt today?
Well, I'm here specifically about school debt, but always in the back of my mind, always talking about take back the land and trying to move the housing discourse. At Take Back the Land, we move homeless people into people's homes, and we do that for a reason because we believe in human rights and the human right to a home.
Gotcha.
And that's what we're all about.
Is there an organization you recommend people go to find out more information?
I say www.takebacktheland.org. It'll tell you all about our work, but there are many other great housing movements around the country. But I think what we do at Take Back the Land is try to transform relationships to land, and that's the difference.
Okay, great. Thank you.
A common target of the planetary noise was the political and financial elites who are destroying communities and the planet. Yet global noise also represented a symbol of hope and unity, building networks between many struggles for justice and solidarity and aimed toward creating another world.
A lot of what the society teaches us is that how you make it is you get into debt, whether it's for going to college, getting a house, that's just how it's done, is you take out a loan. And a lot of people don't really question that and don't think about the repercussions, and so just educating people about when they don't read the fine print and they just sign on the dotted line, what they're really signing up for and what interest really means and what system they're fueling.
The casserole or pot-banging march is a universally understood means to call attention to problems facing communities, problems not addressed by the powers that be, and the noisy method is hard to ignore. The call for Global Noise 13.0 originated in Spain and was heeded by 99%ers around the world.
We don't expect the government to magically make this go away, which is why an organization like Strike Debt put together the Debt Resisters Handbook or Debt Operations Manual, which helps people deal with the debt that they're facing, and in some cases resist paying it, in some cases reduce the burden that it puts on their life. We're not expecting Obama or Romney to magically make this problem go away. We have to deal with it in our own way.
Huge street protests were held in London, Australia, Amsterdam, Germany, and Spain. Activists were united in their purpose to illustrate the injustice of making sick, disabled, and needy people pay for a financial crisis not of their making. Governments tell the people that these are desperate times, that there is great debt, that austerity must be the order of the day. Cruel measures are forced on the people because governments no longer act in the people's best interests. They do only the bidding of the moneylenders. Salaries of banking and corporate elites increase by 45% a year, and ordinary people stomach pay freezes and cuts. Global noise activists took a stand against the monstrous banking and corporate machine which is trashing the global economy, destroying communities, making people homeless, wrecking lives, killing indigenous people, financing endless wars for resources, polluting and plundering the earth. The primary message of the October 13 actions was to the financial institutions of the world, with protesters shouting, "We owe you nothing." Another message went out to friends, families, communities, humanity, and the natural world. "We owe you everything." Occupy London was an incredible scene of speeches, marches, and arrests. Mass demonstrations in the streets proclaimed that austerity measures are unreasonable, that ordinary people should not be forced to pay for the financial crisis, that this was created by the bankers within the financial services.
the march set off from St Paul's, there was a lot of people. Then when police started kettling us along the route, I think a lot of people got a bit scared that they were going to get trapped or there was going to be violence, and so I think people kind of filtered away during the march, and so there's less people here now. And obviously now the police have started saying they're going to arrest people, there's even fewer.
This week, even the IMF has declared that austerity is making the United Kingdom economic situation worse. Austerity policies are unfairly damaging those who had no role in creating the deficit, while also creating further economic depression.
I'm in a lot of pain, I'm taking a lot of heavy drugs to actually get here and be here, but I'm prepared to stand up and say what needs to be said. People need to hear it.
In Britain, the IMF has predicted that the UK economy will shrink by 0.4% if it continues with the savage cuts it is planning to make to the public sector. This is downgrading its original outlook that the economy will grow by 0.2% within the next year. Faced with coordinated attacks on social gains, resistance is getting organized around the world. There are national general strikes, and the Indignados movements are increasingly active. In Iceland, the people refused to pay the ICE-Save debt to the UK and the Netherlands. In Ecuador, the people pushed the government into a debt audit that saved the country millions of dollars in debt payments. In many other countries, people have been resisting and opposing debt for decades. In Spain and in Portugal, from the 15th of September on, enormous demonstrations against debt have gathered more than 1 million people, and a movement of major scale is growing around the surrounding of the Parliament in Madrid to demand a constituent process. The people are making noise to call for public and private debt resistance and repudiation. Debt resistance includes fighting for free public education, free health care, defending foreclosed homes, demanding higher wages, and providing mutual aid, but also a first step to build a new economy based in the principles of equality, solidarity, and cooperation, not greed, accumulation, and competition. Popular uprisings are gathering momentum and force on every continent, yet activism in the United States, home of the brave and the free, is struggling. The U.S. is caught up in the most expensive presidential election ever foisted on its public. The Democratic and Republican parties host fancy, multi-thousand-dollar-a-plate dinners where the candidates and their crews hobnob with Wall Street bankers, corporate lobbyists, and fervent partisan supporters. Mainstream media plays along with the show, broadcasting tepid debates full of hollow rhetoric and empty promises. Third-party candidates are not even invited onto the stage. U.S. 99%ers face multiple crises: rampant unemployment, short-changed military veterans, discontented active-duty troops, homelessness, disappearing savings, puny pensions, lack of health care, hunger, economic disaster, environmental devastation, endless war, and the gutting of constitutional rights. But a viewer of the fantasies staged by the two corporate parties would never know it. An American public fascinated last year by Occupy Wall Street and the real hope and change of human thousands in the streets has succumbed to constant mind-numbing messages of fear and cynicism by mass media 24/7. Europeans are falling like dominoes to punitive austerity measures, with representative governments replaced by financial managers and wave after wave of huge street protests, again unreported by corporate media. Independent journalists, a few international broadcast organizations, and social networks have become the primary source of news for millions of citizens around the globe. The Occupy movement circles the planet, manning the watchtowers, dissecting the status quo, developing stronger networks, and working within their communities to bring about a better world. Yet the majority of citizens in the U.S. still cling to a broken system, as if ducking reality will protect them from the austerity measures, civil unrest, and ruthless authoritarianism. Citizens of the planet are rising, demanding social and economic justice, and wondering when, if ever, Americans will join them. The link between the military-industrial complex, corporate America, and the office of the President of the United States has been providing the U.S. public with election spectacle after election spectacle at least since 1968. The U.S. democracy at first became a pawn with Richard Nixon's election in 1968, and by 1976 it had become a hostage to corporate America. It is a very long and tragic story of how a young nation with the best intentions at heart allowed its governing apparatus to transform into a warring monstrosity despised by the world. Here we will offer one example of how military minds are able to steer the most well-meaning enterprises toward murder. The Bell Aircraft Corporation's helicopter division used to be a cottage industry prior to its takeover by Textron in 1960. After JFK's assassination in 1963, the U.S. became embroiled in a war in Vietnam that was to last a decade. Bell Helicopter Company's revolutionary Huey utility helicopters proved their worth to the U.S. war planners early on in that war. In Vietnam, the machines were used for everything, from moving entire air mobile divisions to offering close air support to the U.S. troops bogged down by a determined native population defending its own turf.
How many men who listen to me tonight have served their...
Nothing you can sing but country songs. Nothing you can say but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy.
Well enough to hate.
What really began to happen after a few months was that you could get as far as understanding that this was crazy.
Around 5,000 helicopters deployed by the U.S. forces in Vietnam were lost in combat or to accidents. The majority of these aircraft were Bell helicopters that by this time had become the standard workhorses of the U.S. military. Bell Helicopter Company went from a cottage industry to an industrial giant in just 10 short years. The company has maintained a powerful lobby in U.S. politics ever since. The Bell Helicopter Company's short journey could have taken decades without war, and without war, the company's voice in U.S. politics would have been a much longer time coming and certainly less audible. Although the company has never been singled out as an offender in U.S. domestic politics, this provides a good example of how civilian businesses have ended up in the clutches of the military-industrial complex, forced to perform as one of its tentacles with a firm grip on numerous White House administrations. So the next time you hear fine rhetoric on the U.S. economy, or hate speech directed at some country halfway around the world that you know nothing about coming from a presidential hopeful, it more than likely will not be to the benefit of 99%ers, but for the profit margins of corporate America, whose greed has led to tactics of international smash and grab and the premature deaths of tens of millions of innocents worldwide since the Second World War.
Nothing you can do that can't be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say but you can learn how to play the game.
This year, another fine show has been arranged to attempt to fool the U.S. public again into believing that the police state they live in is a democracy. This year, two candidates are again taking part in the charade to realize the ruling elite's perverse fantasies of limitless wealth and power. Left unchecked, the rulers are capable of destroying our planet as demonstrated by the disappearing rainforests, melting ice shelves in the Antarctic, poisoned seas, and extinction of thousands of animal species. 99ers must move quickly and organize not only to wrestle back their democratic self-determination from the abyss of imposed misery, but to save the planet from certain annihilation by the 1%. There is no planet B.